We are very privileged to have with us an eminent panel. May I request the moderator of the session to kindly join us onto the stage. Please join me as I invite on stage founder and president OMIIA Consulting, Mr. Ketul Patel. Very warm welcome to you, sir. May we also invite on stage Mr. Pranav Srinivasan, who is the co-founder, Accio Robotics. Mr. Pranav Srinivasan, very warm welcome to you. May we also invite on stage Mr. Sanjeev Choudhary, who is the CEO, Skart Global Express. Mr. Sanjeev Choudhary, very warm welcome to you. Before we begin the session, may I say a few words about the moderator of the session. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator, Mr. Ketul Patel, is the founder and president of OMIIA Consulting, operating across the US and India. Mr. Patel is at the forefront of fostering growth enablement and revenue profitability through supply chain excellence. With those words, may I request the moderator of the session to kindly take over. And over to you, sir.
Great. Hello, everyone. And thank you for the panel for joining, Sanjeev, Pranav. And certainly looking forward to a great discussion here around e-commerce fulfillment and some of the challenges as well as strategies around that, right? So talking about the e-commerce fulfillment, this is something that has really picked up, as you guys know, over the last 3-4 years, and it has exponentially now really grown since the COVID times. And with that comes also the changing customer preferences as well around same-day delivery or next-day delivery, and really putting pressure on the fulfillment aspect around e-commerce. And many of the companies, as you know, especially the manufacturers who were traditionally now supplying to, right, directly either to B2B, are now looking at opportunities to transpire into B2C space as well. And this is something that has really now forced a lot of the companies to start expanding into a new channel, which has also started to put a lot of pressure on the companies to adapt to that. And so certainly we would love to, today we'll talk about the e-commerce fulfillment around same day and then also the last mile. And the distinguished panel, both of them, it's fortunate to have Sanjeev, who really focuses on the last mile logistics space with Skart, and Pranav with Accio Robotics is more into the four walls robotic automation within the distribution environment. So we'll certainly bounce some ideas around and hopefully make it more engaging. And then we'll leave some time at the end for you guys to ask any questions there may be. So with that, first I'll start out with Sanjeev around the last mile space, around, as we have seen, especially with the same day and next day delivery SLAs. If you could just share some of the strategies and some innovative approaches that your company deploys, right, to address that with your customers. Would love to hear that.
So I come from a time when everything was done manually. There was hardly any system, what we can talk about now. Basically from that time, 3 things which have stood the test of a time are: first, the process. So once upon a time, the strength of our organization was known by their processes, and which still stands. Your process cannot be replaced. Point number 1. Point number 2 is technology. How fast, how brilliantly you adopt a technology is the name of the game. Third is implementation. Do whatsoever. You may have the best of the technology, you may have best of the processes. If implementation is not ruthless, and when I say ruthless, take it positively, don't take it negatively, okay? If it's not proper, nothing works. So these are 3 things that we purely work upon. Now, coming back to what we have done in Skart. So, in terms of last mile, it is always better to be near to a consumer or to the place where you have to deliver the parcel. So what we have done, let's take an example. We have created multiple PUD centers. In case of NCR, what we have today is about 10 PUD centers across, and by coming financial year, we are planning to take it to 14, 15 PUD centers. Now, what PUD centers across NCR does is makes you place near to the delivery area. Second, with it helps you to the route optimization. So you can optimize the route much more brilliantly. The local PUD manager knows the route in out at back of his hand. So the person knows when the shipment should be moving out, how it should be moving out, all those things. On top of it, we bring technology, okay? So which is a route optimization platform with geofencing and other technologies. So that helps a big time. Third thing, all before panelists I have heard saying talking about technology. End of the day, do not miss that we are dealing with humans. We are dealing with their anxieties, right? It is important to take care of their anxiety. You don't deliver a parcel for one day and imagine what you are going to get from the customer. And you are dealing with a human, right? The best way of taking care and checking that anxiety is how information you can pass to the customer. So we work on real-time track and trace. That is one thing that keeps the anxiety in check. Fourth thing, which is about search in demand. So we have worked something on search and demand. How do we take care of it? Last is you have to be always open. Continuously, you have to keep on working upon bettering you what you have been doing all this while, right? So this is the way. These are the few things that we have been doing in Skart.
No, that's great. And something to add to the last mile strategies as well, right? So there's a significant push now happening around, as you guys may have heard about, shipping to store, right? And multiple ways to reach the customer. Whether you ship it to the store and then let the customer pick it up from the store, or you ship it directly, obviously, through the traditional channel directly to their home, or even the pickup locations. So there are a lot of drop boxes as well that are being set up where Amazons and others are dropping at a specific location and the code is being sent out, and then from there customer can go in and pick up their goods. So multiple ways the last mile is being kind of innovated now. So thank you again for the insight there. Now, one of the things that in the e-commerce space, e-com fulfillment, because of the exponential growth over the last 3, 4, 5 years that we have seen, one of the drawbacks or the side effects of it is the exponential increase of the returns goods, right? So obviously, we order 3, 4 things at home, we try out few things and send 3 of them back and keep 1. So the industry projections are that there's almost 3 to 4 times the returns. Traditional returns has been somewhere around 3% or so in traditional retail, and which has gone over almost 3 to 4 times now with the e-commerce spiking. And so one of the things that, a question I have, Pranav, for you is that being in the warehouse automation space, right? This must be a huge deal for the warehouses now to see these returns coming back, right? So if you can just enlighten us in terms of what kind of automation that your solutions kind of deploy to address this returns disposition, some putting back in the inventory and some may have to be disposed, right? So would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, am I audible? Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me on the panel. And coming to the question, so one thing that at least we've noticed, it might sound pretty foolish as well coming from us. The thing is, since we're new to the industry, what we kind of feel is there is a lot of excess use of material handling equipment and excessive use of, let's say, transport equipment that probably don't add as much value in the complete value chain of a particular, in the life cycle of an item. So what we tried to do with a lot of our solutions is we tried to build them in such a way we try to think about how what would we do if all these equipment didn't exist. For example, if you're talking about a simple pallet mover or whatever it is, what would we do if that didn't exist, and we build out our solutions according to that. Now when we look at it from that perspective, what happens is when we take a particular warehouse, or when we're taking over the inventory of a particular warehouse, the input into the inventory, or the how the inventory is fed into the warehouse is pretty much controlled by us. So for example, when our robots are first deployed, the inventory is put onto the robots in such a way that they can be stacked onto the racking through the robots. So the software automatically knows where every item is gone into the warehouse and which particular location we are putting it. So this way, when there is a put away process happening initially, we know where the inventory already is. Now coming to the return to origin that we face in e-commerce, what happens is when our robots are doing the picking and we are getting the order, we exactly know from the software side where each of our inventory is going. And when the return is happening, we tagged everything to a particular SKU code, right? So when we know which particular SKU code, we know when it is being shipped and where it is being shipped to. We know where we have to put it back as well, because the whole loop is pretty closed. So I think it's a combination of both the hardware, how the robots interface with the exact tracking and the physical tracking, as well as the software, the backend, and how we interact with our clients' WMS to help them kind of close the whole loop. So I think that is where our solutions, I think, stand out in a particular warehouse, where what I've noticed, if there's a return to origin that comes back, it first has to go into a particular material handling equipment, and then it goes into a stacker, it then goes into multiple equipment before it goes back to the racks, and that kind of seems counterintuitive, and that is where our solutions play a role, where you load all the systems or the inventory back to the robot, and the robot knows exactly where to put it back, because we are tracking every SKU code. So that is how I think all of the loop is closed by our systems.
Great, thank you. I think that's a great insight there. And obviously, Sanjeev, you guys have to bring all the returns back to the warehouses from the customers, right? And so if you could, would like to comment anything or share any thoughts around how do you guys manage that, and if there are any specific strategies that you deploy to manage returns.
The return you're talking about?
Yeah, for the returns, that's right.
So let's understand the basic difference between outbound and inbound. Okay, what you are moving out and what is coming back as a return. When you are moving out, you have physically the goods in your hand. That makes the job or logistics that much easier, because logistics, end of the day, is moving the goods. In RTO, what happens is your information, the flow of information, makes your job either the most easiest or the most difficult. So in RTO, when I talk to my team, IT team and everybody around, my only point to them is how smooth information flow can be. The smoother the information flow, the better it is. And if you can link it with the person on the ground, which is your pickup boys, what we call them, right? Then it becomes that much easier. So end of the day, again, I'm repeating myself, I think for the fourth time, it is all about information flowing out from the point of pickup to the person who is picking it up.
That's great, and that is kind of right. The data visibility and data clarity, I think, is one of the biggest challenges, right? Especially when you see the e-com ecosystem kind of building with, and we'll talk about a little bit around, right, multiple technologies as well. So now, one of the things with the same day, next day, as we talk about, what is now that's requiring the traditional manufacturers, the traditional retailers to do now, is in order to meet those requirements, you need to move the inventory closer to where the consumers are, so that you can meet those same day, next day requirements. And something that, what that does is that now it puts challenge on how do you now leverage that same inventory across multiple channels. And because now you are breaking it down into many different nodes in local geographic areas, and it becomes much more difficult to manage the inventory without impacting the safety stock, right? So, Pranav, right, obviously with your solutions, right, as you kind of help manufacturers look at omni inventory, if you will, if you could just elaborate on, right, how your solution or the automation is used to kind of manage that inventory in kind of, for this challenge that we have here.
So yeah, so like probably a bit of overlap with the previous answer as well, right? So like we said, so when we're taking over a warehouse to manage their fulfillment, one of the primary things we do is to first understand how their inventory has been operating for the last 6 months. So by that, what I mean is we get data in terms of what kind of orders are being fulfilled, where is the location, which locations are majorly catered to, and what SKUs are majorly catered to. And we also look at what is the quantity of each line item that is mostly ordered. So all of this gives us a deep insight in terms of the warehouse behavior. Now, the moment we understand the warehouse behavior, what more often than not we have found out is in every warehouse, it follows this Pareto principle to an extent, where 80%, 20% items are ordered 80% of the times, and we then try to segregate the inventory to ensure that they are the closest stacked. So basically the conclusion comes to how important data plays a role here, and the more data we have, the easier it is for us to predict the behavior of the warehouse. Now, what it also lets us do to this extent is it also lets us offer our customers an extra layer of giving them trend analytics as to what they might have to order in the future, or keep stock inventory, or back order for a future date. So if you're talking about let's say a apparel facility, right? So they know which channel, is it retail, is it e-com, which channel is exactly needing that particular inventory a lot more, and how fast will it have to be shipped. In the case of e-com, it might have to be a lot more faster, right? So helping them predict this also lets them maybe plan a lot of their cash flows upfront. And I think now when we interface all of this software intelligence with the robots, what it helps us do is it helps us fulfill this inventory faster. Because we're placing a lot of the important inventory closer to, let's say, the pickers, or where the interface or the exit gate to the warehouse is, we are also able to give them better throughputs, and which also helps us fulfill the orders faster. So this is in terms of, I think it doesn't just isolate inventory per se, but it also is in terms of how fast we can fulfill this inventory for the customer, in terms of point number one. But point number two, if I look at handling it end to end, because the inventory is flowing into the warehouse through our robots, be it in terms of, primarily our robots, what we help our customers do is, whatever they can store in a 10,000 square foot facility, we would help them store it in a 2,500 square foot facility, because we can climb vertically a lot higher than a regular automation solution that moves around material. So because we get to do that, the inbound is also done by our robots, and the put away is also done by a robot. So we know exactly, like I said, we know exactly where each of these items are. So that way there is a lot lesser pilferage that takes place. There's a lot lesser loss of inventory that takes place. So all of this together, it kind of again rounds up the solution to, one, give them exact analytics in terms of how their inventory is used, how they can forecast their inventory, and also in terms of how fast we can dispatch this. Because one of the major jobs of our solutions is to increase the picks per hour of our customer to be able to fulfill them faster, right? So yeah, all of this inventory plays a major role for us to be able to predict and do that fulfillment faster. Yeah.
Great. So, and one of the things you talked about, right, around the picks per hour and how you kind of support the outbound order fulfillment, one of the things, as we see in e-commerce fulfillment, is the surges, right? As the peak comes with promotional events, or any other holiday events or things like that comes up, there's a significant surge that now the warehouses have to kind of manage. So how do you kind of use your automation to kind of go through these peaks and valleys in processing, right? If you could just elaborate on that.
So I think there's a multifold answer to it of sorts. As in, you will have to look at multiple aspects. One is, of course, the capital expenditure for the warehouse. I'll just call it capital, and I'll explain what I mean by that. And the number of robots or the automation equipment that you will be using, and also predicting when these surges are going to happen. So when we look at these three aspects, now if I'm specifically talking about the capital, right? it doesn't make sense for the warehouse to own a lot more automation equipment than they would actually need, because these surges are going to be very seasonal. It might be catering to a particular festival, it might be catering to a particular event, right? So the surges are very seasonal. And so that is going to be point number one, where it doesn't make sense for them to invest in automation equipment keeping only these surges in mind, because the rest of the time these automation equipment are not being used. Then the second thing is, the number of robots or the number of automation equipment that you'll be needing, and predicting when these things have to be used. So where capital plays a huge role is the moment you're able to predict when these surges have to happen. One thing that the automation industry as a whole has started adapting very frequently is this robotics as a service model. Now, this is where our software stack comes into play, where the moment we are able to predict these surges, we are able to add more robots to the fleet or remove robots from the fleet. And when the customer only has to pay a monthly fee or a quarterly fee for these robots, we're also helping them optimize for the capital expenditure for that particular quarter or when that surge happens. And our fleet manager, which is basically the intelligence of the robot, lets them handle these robots at a more easier way. And as a company that's providing these services, it also helps us rotate our our main SKU, which is our robots, across customers. So we don't necessarily, the customer doesn't own the robots and the customer doesn't have the risk associated with it. But as a company that builds the robots, we have the leverage to be able to move these robots around depending on demand. It might be area, it might be related to the area, it might be related to season, depending on what kind of warehouse we're catering to, right? So it kind of gives both of us the flexibility to deal with the surges. Yeah.
No, that's very interesting, right? So when we in the pre-robotic days, right, we used to look at fixed labor, and then you have your variable labor that goes up and down, right? That surges and then comes back down. So there's an innovative way to kind of use robots as a service, right, to meet that kind of peak demand there. And so in the similar line, I'm sure there's a similar challenge, Sanjeev, right, for you guys as well, to kind of bring all these surge back, or in a forward deliver it to the customers around the festivals and holiday times or promotional events. And if you could share some insights there or your thoughts in terms of what strategies you use.
So this surge thing is as old as I am, probably older than me, and all of us have faced it. So we can divide the surge primarily into 3 buckets. One is, which is very, very known. Diwali, come what may, surge will happen. Rakhi, surge will happen, right? So these are known time. So you plan it accordingly. Second is where data helps you. So when the customer that you are dealing with, you know when the surge is going to come. So the first 2 are planned. The problem happens when it is unplanned. Suddenly, one fine day, something comes up which you have just not planned for. So there are 2-3 ways that you deal with them. Technology, I have left it to Pranav to talk about, so let me not get in there. Okay, so I'm talking more from an operation perspective. To deal with, as a last mile service provider, whatsoever capability I may have, still we always have third-party logistics on our payroll who we can go back should there something of like this happens, right? And you have to ensure that you have running relation with these people. Point number 1, extremely, extremely important to take care of surge. Point number 2, you have to work on, and you have to do it again and again. How do you use your warehouse in a clockwork manner? For example, I'm just giving example to you. We also do international, right? So today, if the load comes in, I know between 7 o'clock in the evening to 9 o'clock in the evening or 10 o'clock in the evening, my entire warehouse, the only work which happens is for international consignment. We do not touch domestic at that point of time. Domestic is lying at one place only. The moment it is 10:30, 11 o'clock, domestic takes over the international part. International remains at one place, right? We know at night about 3 o'clock, if surge comes in, 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning, that Additional load has to be worked upon. And this you have to do it continuously so that it gets ingrained in people, right? Because this is part of our life and it will remain part of our life.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the insights there. Let's talk a little bit about our customers, right? Certainly that we cater to. So, Sanjeev, right? As we look at in the realm of e-commerce fulfillment, right? As what we're talking about, customer experience has been shaping the solutions, right? Everything that we look at, and they have actually been driving the whole industry, right? Whether we talk about the same day, next day, customization, personalization, we want it where we want it, when we want it, right? I mean, and we cater to that. So leveraging technology has become such a key element of it as well, right? So as we look at this, how have you seen, what have you observed in terms of the customer experience, right? Driving these support solutions, right? When we look at it, and I'm sure, from your logistics aspect of it as well, because you touch the customer, you are the last one to touch the customer, right? When you deliver it to their homes. So would love to hear your thoughts there.
Okay. Again, I'll take you back to once upon a time. Probably many people who are of my age or maybe in their 40s would know we were a socialist country at one point of time, where it was the manufacturer who ruled the market. Buyer had no say, and youngsters would not even understand that, right? From that time, we have moved to a place where it is the buyer who rules the market. It is buyer who needs the information. What has also happened is, because of technology, because of mobile, because of pager at one point of time, the patience level in people have come down drastically. And it has nothing to do with logistics. It is to do with every aspect of life. So therefore, what we have worked upon are two things. One, as I said earlier, we keep the anxiety level in check. That is one. Second, we ensure that the information reaches to the customer. So there are few places where we ensure that information reaches to the customer. If there is anything to do with cost, if there is any change in cost happening, we inform the customer, because that is the first trigger point where a customer can flare up. Point one, if there is any delay because of whatsoever reason, keep the customer informed. If you tell a customer that, look, because of X reason I will not deliver today, I'll deliver tomorrow, 90% of the cases customers may be completely okay. Do not inform them, go next day and you face the consequences of it, right? That's the second point that we take care of it. Third point, because of whatsoever reason, if we have to hold a shipment at any place, we ensure that the information is reaching to the customer, and these all are automated systems. So in our system, the way we have worked it out, that the moment a particular scan event is triggered, that itself triggers the message to go to the customer and keep the customer informed. Last and important point, end of the day, how much technology you bring in. There are times when a person wants to talk to a human being at other end. So therefore we give a number where these people can contact us, talk to us if they want. So that there is a human touch or human element also we bring along with the technology. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. And I think, as we kind of think through that further around the technology aspect of it, right, which is kind of driving all this, or actually the requirements from the customers is driving innovation in technologies. And so question, Pranav, for you is that as we see this landscape evolving, right, with warehouses, the logistics solutions are now becoming more and more an ecosystem of technologies, right? Even within the four wall that we look at, the sophisticated robotic solutions, the warehouse control systems, warehouse management systems, labor management systems, the wave picking, everything is being kind of now being specialized in a way where we see the technology being advanced. So if you could just talk about, any specific tools or platforms that you have found most beneficial, and how do you look at using those, leveraging those, and integrating those to streamline the e-commerce operations, right, within the four walls?
So what I feel that the phase that we are in, I think in the whole warehousing spaces. So one of the reasons, our primary reason, let's say, to get into this whole space of building for warehouses, building robots for warehouses, started from actually finding out what is the lowest hanging or repetitive process that robots can be used to make better. So that way, warehouses, the predictability that a warehouse offers makes it easier to build robots for the warehouse, and that's also why robotics robotics thrives in the warehousing ecosystem, right? So that being said, I think right now warehousing is in that space where it is kind of 85 to 90% solved, but the balance 10% is where it's more about optimization, and the last 10%, I think it plays a lot. Data is going to play a huge role, right? Where you understand, like I said earlier, if you're able to predict surge, right, the amount of things that we're able to come up with, something like when you're talking about generative AI, which has been like a huge theme over the last year or so in the world as such. I think we're heading to a place where, with the right amount of data and with the right kind of data sets, we're going to be able to start creating or use AI to create those perfect warehouses, be it in terms of robotic solutions for those warehouses, planning those warehouses in terms of inflow, outflow. I think right now when we go into planning a warehouse, the number of variables that are there, like Sir said, there are already certain processes that are followed, but since those processes are repeatable, there is a lot of room where when you plan the warehouse, you can also model the warehouse in such a way that you can exactly predict what is the inflow, outflow, and all of that, and when the surge is going to happen. Basically, more accurate modeling of the warehouses. Now, when that happens, automatically it's easier to build solutions for the warehouse using robotic technology. And as a result, as an extension, when you're talking about specific data collection through IoT devices and all of that. So even if you're talking about an existing warehouse which is already running a few machinery, can we attach custom solutions, be it in terms of anything that is gathering data in terms of operations of the machinery, utility of the manpower in that particular warehouse? All this data collection would, I think, help existing players build more efficient warehouses in the future. And I think it's that last 10% is always tricky. Anything that we build out, right? I think that's the space where we are at. So some interesting tools. I think warehousing is one place where I feel something like generative AI has not really kicked in, has not really taken shape to an extent it can. And I think we'll see a lot of companies that are building these warehouse control systems and warehouse management systems, more smarter versions of them, really leverage that. So for example, something that we're trying to do at our end as well is in terms of how we build solution for the warehouse. We have our robots, we have the hardware, we have the software, but an important piece of our puzzle is how quickly can we offer solutions to our customers so that we get a yes or no from the customer in terms of can this robotic system be deployed or not, right? So can we fast track a lot of those using AI, right? So this is something that I think a lot of companies in our space are exploring, and that I think is going to play a key role in terms of how fast warehouses evolve over the next 5-6 years.
Great, excellent. Love that insightful answer there. Obviously, we recognize, right, that more and more technologies, as the technologies gets added in, robotics, right, that we start relying on, and along with the traditional technologies that we have been operating with, you can imagine this is kind of expanding the partner ecosystem. And even in this kind of exhibition hall that you can see over 100 partners with so many playing in this robotic space and different apps that are being kind of deployed, it's now supply chain, as we kind of look at, or e-commerce fulfillment as we look at, is becoming kind of more and more a collaboration of partners, right? A partner ecosystem. And something that is, which is forging alliances, right, within the logistics providers, technology providers, or vendors, other stakeholders, is becoming truly kind of a differentiator for the companies out there today. So, Sanjeev, if you could, share some examples of successful collaborations or their outcomes as you have seen, especially in the last mile space with Skart, and how you kind of use that to kind of basically propagate, right, your value add, if you will, for your customers.
So you only want to know about last mile space or the entire business that we do?
And anything that you partner with.
Okay. So we primarily in Skart, we are into anything which is door to door. So the first product and the oldest product that we handle is not e-commerce, but it is primarily commercial cargo, door to door. Probably in India, we'll be one of the largest who will be doing commercial cargo door to door, right? And that entire business is built upon collaboration. That entire business is built upon partnership with different agents or different people across the globe. In 120 countries, we have partners who does this work for us. So probably we understand the collaboration to the word, every alphabet of that word. Point number two, we are also into international courier. So we have a tie with different companies where we have done API integration with each one of them. Now, there the idea is to target MSME because that is one of the areas which will take us to the next stage if we have to go there. Last point, which is your e-commerce, last mile. Now, in doing this, there are multiple stakeholders who come into picture. Manpower management companies are one. Vehicle companies, the people who provide you with vehicles, are two. The people who give you technology are three. The people who manage your warehouses, right, are four. So there are different aspects of people that you have to collaborate with. With each one of them, you have to have different set of engagement. With some technology wise, with some it is pure understanding the way you work.
Great. Pranav, if you'd like share any thoughts there. Yeah, I think you have shared plenty of the ecosystem, the questions. I think we're coming at the tail end of this, and certainly would like to open up for any questions from the audience, and then we can certainly do a final wrap up here as well. Any questions? Okay, if nothing else, I know we're probably the last ones here stopping you guys for calling the day here. But just to wrap up here, and then I'll certainly give the panel an opportunity as well. One of the questions that was posed in the prior session around, right, as to what the universities and what right, the Gati Shakti Vidyalaya or other universities ought to be doing, and what we talked about around building an ecosystem around technology or collaborative partnerships. I think what is evolving here with the AI and robotics and whatnot is really making it complex to work with robots, right? And so it's a coexistence of humans and robots. That is where we are headed now. And to now work with these multiple technologies, the biggest thing that, at least what I have seen in this space, is where it truly defines success and failure is the change management. That how do the organizations adopt and adapt to these technologies, to the new ways of working, is, I think, the most existential requirement that we have for the new graduates, for the new folks coming out, or even the folks that are being introduced into this field. And which is where even, I've done a lot of work even in the US as well, and which is much in all these matured markets. This is where we see the biggest gap today. That there are so many technologies in all different areas that are being introduced to organizations, but the organizations are not prepared to absorb it or adapt to it. And that's why you don't see full returns and return on investments coming back. And so with that, certainly I'll give Sanjeev anything you would want to share as a wrap up.
We should allow a younger person first.
So I think so one thing that we've noticed a lot in some of the customers we talk to and all of that, adding and very overlapping with your point, is there's a huge divide between the people that run the warehouses and the people that are probably running the organization that runs the warehouses. So what happens is, because of the disconnect, the people obviously that run the warehouses are probably not aware of what kind of technology can be adapted and used in a particular warehouse. But the people that probably run the business are quite aware of what happens, and but they just don't know that this is a problem that exists in the warehouse, because they're not hearing it from their user, which is the warehouse manager. Or so I think understanding that's where I think the adaptation of technology in an organization kind of is failing in a particular warehouse, where the user is not able to really resonate with the technology because they themselves firsthand don't understand the importance of it. Even though the technology might be improving their throughputs, it might be reducing their manpower costs, it might be making it easier for them to deal with attrition. But there's just some kind of friction, because it's also, I think, as a country, especially in India, we've gotten very used to relying on manpower because of the abundance of it. And so that's where the human-robot collaboration aspect plays a key role. So as a part of, I think, having a little bit of an open mind, I think that curiosity is something that we like to believe plays a huge role, especially in the education ecosystem, right? Like students being actually curious about how a particular technology stack can be used in a warehouse or not, if at all you're very aligned to that field, is something that we feel a lot of textbooks have not still started adapting. Even if you talk about mainstream, even if you talk about engineering textbooks and all that, you're not really talking about a lot of what is the latest form of. You're still talking about what is the old stuff that were done, and then that leaves it to the students to be able to adapt by themselves. And so I think that curiosity is probably something that is lacking a lot, be it in terms of the students that enter the logistics, generally the working ecosystem, but also the logistics space. I think people are more comfortable with things that are solved and don't really want to explore what's going on. So I think I would just top it off with curiosity being the underlying thing. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Lovely. Sanjeev?
So, for me, there are 4 fundamental to logistics, and they have been there from time immemorial. The first fundamental, which logisticians have been working around from ages, is how do you reduce TAT or increase speed? That's the first fundamental. Second fundamental, everybody has been working around, how do you curtail or bring down cost, right? Third thing, which people have been working around, how can you manage complexities? Fourth thing, which people have been working around from ages now, is how do you improve visibility? Now you pick any time of history, 10 years, 100 years, 1000 years. These 4 fundamental have stood the test of time, right? All the technology that we are talking about now, 10 years earlier, 10 years from now, would be to cater to one of these 4 fundamentals. So whether we talk about AI, whether we talk about BI, whether we talk about blockchain, whether we talk about anything, is to take care of one of those 4 fundamentals that are there. So when we get into any technology thing, right, and with youngsters especially, so my first question is, which of these 4 part is the technology answering to? So in our case, for example, I'm just giving you an answer. API. Now API is one of the finest technologies which has revolutionized the way we work. It allows multiple small companies to come together and challenge the biggest of the giants, right? Why API is so important? It solves one fundamental problem. It reduces the complexity involved in 2 companies coming together, right? Now, so you talk about ERP. What ERP does, or what I spoke about earlier, the way we do of the cost or the way we manage the transit time. Everything has been, shall remain on these four fundamental points. That's the way I look at it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again for the insights, and thank you again, distinguished panel, for your thoughts and enlightening discussion today. And hope everyone enjoyed the discussion here as well. And that's a wrap. Thank you much.
Thank you for that wrap, moderator, sir. And thank you so much, esteemed panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us in this conversation. And may I now request from the organizing team, Ms. Radhika, to kindly join us on stage to present the mementos. This is just an extension of what we feel, heartfelt gratitude towards our eminent panelists. We like to present a memento to our moderator, Mr. Ketul Patel. May I request you all to kindly put your hands together, and we thank the speakers of the session for joining us and sharing their thoughts with us. We would like to present a memento to Mr. Pranav Srinivasan. Thank you so much, Mr. Srinivasan. We also acknowledge and extend our heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Sanjeev Choudhary. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your time with us and your thoughts as well. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we would want to wrap up the day. But before that, I request the members on the stage to kindly step forward for a group photograph. For tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, we would begin sharp at 10:30 in the same hall. Our first session of this conference tomorrow would be on cross-border logistic insights.